Hi guys, my name is Julia and we are talking today about some technical SEO parameters, the robots.txt file, the XML sitemap and HTTPS. So here we start. Let's have a look at the robots.txt file first. Here is an example. This is my own website. This robots.txt file, you see it's a very simple, easy, short file. There isn't much in here, but it already gives a lot of information. So the purpose of the robots.txt file is to tell crawlers like the Google crawler, for example, where to go on the website, where not to go, and where to find certain pieces of information. So we see here user agent is marked with an asterisk. That means it is valid for all types of crawlers. So in this case here, it is not defined for a specific crawler like the Google crawler. It means, hey, all types of crawlers, if you come here, I don't want you to go to this place. So this is a URL that you don't want crawlers to look at. And I want to make you aware of, this is where my sitemap is. This is all this robots.txt file here is saying. Let's have a look at another one. This one here, for example, on the website othership.com, we see it is already a bit longer. It gets a bit more complex and contains a bit more information. So again, we have specified the user agent as any crawler. Then we have certain URLs that we want to disallow. So we don't want the crawler to go there to read that type of content. Then we have one where we say, hey, yeah, but this one here you actually should look at, even though we say this WP admin you should not look at. There's one file in this folder that we want you to look at. And we also see here there is use of some regular expressions here, telling basically the crawler that we don't want it to look at anything that contains this /feed in the URL or /members, no matter what comes before or after this folder. Same with here, vendor, everything that comes after vendor in the URL. All these URLs we don't want the crawler to look at. We see it can get even more complex. Here, for example, the news website bbc.com and their robots.txt. Everything behind this little hashtag is anyways ignored, so crawlers don't look at it. So that is internal information for their teams. It's their way of giving the robots.txt file a version name. But here it gets important. Again, we have user agent, not specified, valid for all types of crawlers. We can see here there are multiple sitemaps stated. And we can also see here there's a lot more going on that these guys are disallowing, that they don't want Google to look at. So now what you need to know, a disallow is different from a no index, for example. When you give a page a no index tag, the crawler can still read it, but you're essentially telling it, hey Google, I don't want you to take this into your index. Whereas with disallow, you're already telling the crawler, hey, I don't even want you to look at this. You should not know what is in this file. And with disallows, they usually stick to that rule. So it is a directive that crawlers are following. Here we see an example of a different crawler, Magpie crawler, where they want to disallow the whole website. So now the reason why certain websites are doing this, we don't know. We don't need to know. But they might have their reasons. So this could be some kind of crawler that in the past, maybe that's a bot that has been attacking them with a DDoS attack, things like that, and they want to stop that. So they say like, hey, I disallow the whole website. You should not even come here anymore. We look at another example where it gets even more complex. So these guys obviously are having some fun with their robots.txt file. You see here there's quite a bit that's marked with this hashtag here in front. All of this, again, it's ignored by the crawler, but we as humans, we can of course see this. So booking.com, they're also making a bit of fun here, saying, hey, by the way, if you are looking at this, you are probably working in the industry. You are likely to be an SEO or a developer or a copywriter. So why don't you check out our careers page? And then here comes the bit that is actually interesting. So we have, again, multiple sitemaps. We're going to talk about that in a second. You see it gets longer and longer. We have directives here for multiple user agents, multiple bots. So you see here again, there are quite a few where they've disallowed the whole website for. So that is probably something that they had problems with in the past in terms of getting too much traffic from these bots to their website, bringing the servers down, or things like that. We see here Yandex, a different search engine, and there they say, hey, everything is actually allowed for you. And again, Yandex, some multiple rules here. Again, we see some regular expressions in here. Multiple disallows. Then we have user agent Applebot, where we have a different list of what's disallowed and allowed, and so on. So you see it can get quite complex if you have very big websites with multiple directories. And also if you are a big brand like booking.com, these websites are very likely to also suffer from DDoS attacks, for example, or things like where they run out of crawl budget and they want to restrict a bit more and say, hey Google, hey, this is content you should see, this is content you should not see. So the bigger a website and a brand gets, the more complex usually also the robots.txt file is. There are certain rules to follow, and you can find them all here in the Google developers information. Really important, the robots.txt file you see here, they're all directly under the root. No other folder here in between. It's directly homepage / robots.txt. It needs to be a TXT file, obviously, for this to work. It needs to be uploaded to your server, to the right place, and it needs to be UTF-8 encoded so that Google can actually read its content. Because if it can't read the content, it can't follow the directive you're trying to give. And there's a limit of 500 KB. So if your file is getting too big, you should look at what do I need to reduce. But this is quite a lot, so you are unlikely to reach this anytime soon if you have a new website and you're just starting in SEO. So yeah, this is about the robots.txt file, and as we've seen in all of them, they've stated a sitemap location here. And the sitemap is essentially an index that you want to show Google of all the content that you have on your website that you want Google to crawl. So if we go to one of these pages, let's look at the one here of the BBC, for example. It's one of their sitemaps that they've stated in their robots.txt file. You see here it's quite a simple format, very straightforward. It contains all the URLs that come in that category / sport. It has some information about change frequency, so that helps Google determine how often does this page change, and then Google can crawl it more often. So imagine with your crawl budget, the crawler comes, reads your website. It might come again after a certain while, check, hey, has anything changed here? Do I need to update anything in my index? And then it sees, yeah, there were changes, there were no changes, and depending on that, it adjusts how often it comes and visits your website. So if you tell it here, hey, this page is changing hourly, it is more likely that this crawler is actually coming at an hourly basis. Priority, this one is not so important anymore. It used to be, but these days it doesn't matter that much anymore. We see here another file format for the XML sitemap. This is how the Yoast plugin on WordPress websites displays it, but it is essentially the same as this one here. It just looks a bit different, but you see it also as a .xml file. Contains the same information. Another thing we see here is the last modified date. So ideally your website CMS or the content management system that you're using, for example WordPress, is doing all of these things automatically. So whenever you publish a new page on your website, it will be added automatically to your XML sitemap, and also the last modified date. So whenever you make an update to an existing page, it would change here when was this last updated. And that is again just to help Google discover your new content or your content updates faster. And it increases your chances of the content being crawled in a timely manner, and then also for Google to update their index. So imagine Google comes maybe every day to read your sitemap to see have there been added any new pages to the website, or have there been any modifications, and then it knows exactly which content it should crawl. So this is to optimize crawl budget. What we see here is this, in this case, it says sitemap index.xml. So that is the one that is linked from the robots.txt file for this website. And then you have here these sub sitemaps that go in further. And if we open one of those, I've already opened it here. Here's where you see the actual pages in that sitemap. So in this case, it's the post sitemap. So all of these are blog posts on the website. And here you can also see, the URL, and you also have the last modified date in this case. So the other thing that helps with all of this is Google Search Console. So you can and you should submit your sitemap here. So we see here the example again for my website. So it has already the homepage URL in here, and there you could enter just a slug for your sitemap. This has already been submitted here. And you see it was last submitted on the 26th of October. Google last crawled the sitemap on the 1st of November, so about a week ago from the time where I'm recording this. And you see here status, it says success and how many URLs it found on that sitemap. So this is the place where Google would tell you if there was any problem reading your sitemap. So this is highly recommended that you submit your XML sitemap here, just also to get these notifications and to make Google aware of, hey, here's the sitemap. So one important thing for the sitemap, there is a difference between XML sitemap and HTML sitemap. HTML sitemap is what we also call the user-friendly sitemap, and this can look like this here, for example. So we see this is just a normal page. It has a normal URL like any other page on the website. There's nothing with .xml here in the end, so it's a HTML page, and it just looks like a normal page on the website. It is user-friendly, and all of these are links essentially to all these articles. So that is the user-friendly or HTML sitemap, compared to this here, which is an XML sitemap, where we see here the .xml. So this here is more for humans, this is more for machines. But the purpose is similar. It's a list of links, and in that sense you can see your XML sitemap as the fallback option. If your internal linking structure is failing, the XML sitemap is a way for Google to find the pages on your website. The reason why this website here has split things into different ones, it's in general good practice to do that, even if your website is not very big, and having an index sitemap and then sub sitemaps. This is because there's a limit to how much you can display in a sitemap, and I think it is 50,000 URLs. So yeah, if you have a really big website, then you definitely should split that into sub sitemaps. Your XML sitemap, it should only contain URLs that you actually want Google or any other search engine to see and crawl. So there shouldn't be any URLs in your sitemap for URLs that return 404 or that are redirecting to other URLs. So all of these should be removed from your sitemap. It should literally be a list of all the pages that you want Google or other crawlers of other search engines to find on your website. So now the last bit that we want to talk about in this video is HTTPS. And this is essentially the S stands for secure. So it is an extension to the original HTTP, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This is literally, you see it at the beginning of every URL. So we see it here. If we open up the full URL, there's HTTPS in front. We see it here if we open the full URL, so every URL on a website has a protocol, and in most cases these days it should be HTTPS with a secure certificate. And HTTP, it stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, so it is literally the protocol that enables communication between your browser in this case and the server where all the information about the website is hosted. So the browser via HTTP, it sends a request to the server to get the HTML code, which is then through rendering displayed in the browser to make it look really nice. So if we look, for example, at this page here that we've already seen, if I was to open the code of this page, here's what we see. This is the information that is stored on the server, the HTML code, and to display this in the browser, it is rendered to apply all the styling and design and so on. The S in all of this, so here again we can highlight it. It stands for secure, and this comes usually from an SSL certificate, which stands for Secure Sockets Layer. And this is something you get from your hosting provider that encrypts information. And this is needed for HTTPS to work. So it can only be secure if there is something that makes it secure. That's the message here. And yeah, you get that usually from your hosting provider. In most cases these days, it is even included in your hosting because it's so standard by now to have this. Reasons why this can fail are sometimes third-party applications that you might be using on your website. Payment systems, for example, where you need an integration from a third-party provider that is not secure, not encrypted, and that can lead to your security certificate to fail. And if that happens, you should definitely investigate where it is coming from and see that you save this, not just for SEO and for Google, but also because you want to protect the data of your customers and make sure everything is submitted in encrypted ways. That's it. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.